Welcome to another episode of Straight Conversations, and today we have with us Miss Pavel. So please, if you can introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I am Pavel and I'm basically from Manipur, but I've been in Delhi since 2012. Right now I'm working with Nazaria, a queer feminist resource group. We work on LGBTIQ community. We basically as a resource group for queer community and also archiving narratives, archiving lived realities, that's basically what we do. We also conduct trainings and all that. I'm also co-founder of Chinkyhomo project, which is a digital anthology on queer lives from Northeast. And before it, I worked with on issues of masculinity, on the safety of women and girls in the city with different organizations, Center for Health and Social Justice, Breakthrough. I identify as a non-binary femme, and nowadays people always ask about pronouns. So I go by every pronoun, but I think I prefer, I won't say I prefer, but I love it when somebody refers to me with a female pronoun because that do not happen as much. So I'm a non-binary femme.
Okay.
What else? Storytelling is my passion. I love music, and I love fun.
Did you discover your homosexuality first, as in your sexual orientation, or you discovered your feminine side first?
That's a very interesting question, no? I would say that the femininity came out first because sexuality, puberty hits later on. Your sense of identity of what you want, of what is your preference, what sports do you want to play, what sort of games do you like to play? Would you like to play with dolls, or do you like to go out and play cricket? Or would you like to wear a short or a pant, or would you like to wear a skirt? I think that came prior. Because of conditioning maybe, or because puberty hits later on. So I think that was there first, but it was not so conscious. But what's really set, but in my own understanding of self, how I grew to understand my own self, I think realizing the fact that I am homosexual, not trying to say that I know heterosexual and homosexual first, and then I come to know both, not in that way, but growing up, I felt like it was quite normal for a boy to like another boy because that's what I felt ever since I was a kid. It's only when some friends start saying things like, "Oh, I heard about this thing," and then all the elderly people were talking about how bad it is. And then I also realized that nobody spoke about it. I thought nobody spoke about it because just like how nobody speak about sex. I feel like it was just part of their negative, like silence on sex. But later on, I got to know from people that people actually detest it, and that's when, I had to really make a decision around it. Like, how do I want to go about it? How am I going to, not express it? How am I going to curb it? Or in the future, what am I going to do with it in the future? So that came in then. So so this is how it was. But one thing is, homosexuality was something I can always hide because there is no determinant, in terms of your characters. You can make an assumption that because she's like a little effeminate, maybe she is gay. But also another thing is, gender transgression is all the more recognized by the society, and homosexuality is deliberately not recognized by the society. So they're not going to affiliate it to you until and unless you come out and say, "I am that." So I think in terms of the social ostracization, I think it was more evident on the feminine side. Like the second time my parents caught me in my sister's skirts, it came on as a direct command on me that you're not going to do this ever again. We're going to burn this skirt if you do that again.
Okay.
So it came like that, but nobody can come up to me. And at that time, nobody told me that if in the future you might become a homosexual, something like that.
Nobody could reach to that presumption that soon.
Yeah, exactly. So
my understanding has always been that Northeast is culturally more progressive than at least the mainland India or the North India. Can you comment on the state stance, especially Manipur's as a state stance on homosexuality?
So there is this thing, right? the heterogeneity of the world, the same thing at a different space and time will have different meaning to different cultures, right? If you talk about a certain traditions here in Delhi 10 years ago and 10 years from now, or 50 years ago and 50 years from now, how does any culture living in Delhi interpret it is going to be very different, right? And when you talk about patriarchy, we say patriarchy is overwhelming, it's everywhere in the world. It doesn't mean that there's one form of patriarchy sits everywhere. They are similar in the form that with whom lies the power, who gets the decision, the institution of marriage and everything. It's very similar, but in terms of the way people live it, experiences, interpret it, make meaning out of it is very different. So I won't say that Northeast is more progressive than the rest of the country, because I think it's context to context specific. It's different. It's a difference in lifestyle, difference, and also because of the kind of resources that you are used to, the kind of landscape that you, geography that you are exposed to, and because of that, how does your everyday routine get set? Women have a lot more mobility there. Women have a lot more sanction to do many things there. But that doesn't mean that women have a lot more freedom there. Certain freedoms that you have here might be curved there, whereas certain freedoms that you have curved here they might enjoy it there. What British occupation of India did was not just take away all our wealth, but also sort of made us stop thinking the way we've been thinking for a very long time. They just stopped our thought process, and then they replaced it with their own way of looking at things. So now if you look at what predominantly the kind of thought process, the kind of work which is being done on research or this brain related work, academia as you look at it, it's like taking forward the legacy of what British did with this country. And so conversations, if you look at conversations on homosexuality, we're trying to bring in certain past element. We try to reiterate some folklore or some lost traditions, lost culture from certain part of our history, but we're not really going back to it, right? We are referencing, we draw reference from them to try and bring a certain change in the discourse that is happening right now. But the discourse is predominantly coming from a very Western philosophical context and practice. And because of that, such kind of conversations, like the kind of conversations we're having right now, today when I say homosexuality, it's understood between all of us. When I say queer, LGBTQ, it's understood between all of us. This kind of a network or platform is not there back in Northeast or anywhere in the country, which is supposedly, as we call, backward.
Do you think it's easier, like most of the people transition when they leave home because they find it easier, because they have the agency? What do you feel about it?
In my case, so I am again very privileged in that way. So I was good in studies and my family could afford to send me out of Manipur. So I came out of Manipur, and then but in terms of like coming out as a homosexual, coming out as a queer, as a gender queer, as a non-binary femme, I attribute it to a lot of my friends, a lot of my gender queer friends, trans friends.
Those Hyderabad friends?
No. In Delhi. In Delhi,
okay.
basically.
Like you mentioned about your childhood and how you once wore a skirt and your parents were furious. I want to understand from you, what is your understanding of masculinity or femininity?
So I also did, I'm not going to give you a very theoretical understanding of it, because I think that is so done. For me, very recently, somebody asked me, why have I colored my hair red? Why have I colored my hair? Is it because I want to attract more attention? Or would I feel less feminine with my natural black hair? And I was like, for me, masculinity is a certain time period and who I was and what was my being, the iconography of it, till a certain time period. And any alterations to that, I take it as femininity, so it's the same thing as I don't used to shave before, but now I shave every day.
Okay.
It's the same with the hair also, changing that aspect, like it's the same eye, but now I put eyeliner over it, right? So it's the same thing, but making a certain alterations to it is what I would say is femininity for me, you know. And then we'll say, so for me it's attributes and how different entities, experiences, processes, or expresses those attitudes. It's that way for me, I think, masculinity and femininity.
Do you think there is discrimination within the LGBTQI community as well? For example, how does being a trans play out within the community, like with respect to other identities?
So this is a very personal take, okay? As how I experience, and looking back into my own attitude towards LGBT, lesbian, gays, bisexuals and transgenders, I'm coming in from there. One thing that I know about growing up as a queer child is there's a sense of isolation, you know, and of course it's a growing brain. It can't just be like, you know, you at one point I might feel rejection, but I'm definitely gonna make I'm not gonna just sit with rejection just because people haven't accepted me. I'm gonna go and create something on my own because the brain needs to, you know.
Yeah.
Like, so I feel like apart from the on the other hand, on the other side of the isolation, I had, like, this was the devil's work. Like, I had a workshop. My brain was not, I think for a lot of my friends, their brain was not really a workshop. It was a workshop, but not where they create new things, but where they practice what they have been told. Right. And they sort of, most of them were heterosexual, and they sort of fit in cisgender, so it really like matches with what their aspirations, so they did that. But for me, it was like a workshop where I'm always critiquing, dissecting, creating new things.
Yeah.
So that also made me very eccentric, because I'm so obsessed about what I want, what I think, you know, like I have to really focus on that. And that becomes the way I would, you know, like really feel myself whole, you know, like, because I am not going to expect anything from my family and anything, but then just thinking about myself, that became, so I became really eccentric. And because of that, yeah, I'm not calling it selfish, because calling it selfish would be very wrong.
You're very ambitious.
Yeah, I was not selfish because I wanted to be selfish. I became self-absorbed because of the conditions around me. Because people wouldn't accept me the way that I am.
Maybe that was your defense mechanism.
That was my defense mechanism. And I didn't want to, like, I tried my best to sort of try and mingle, assimilate with their desires. I realized it just doesn't serve any purpose. Every time I feel rejected, every time I feel incomplete. So I was like, okay, I'll do this for social function, but I need to go back and have a couple of hours to myself and just get lost in my own work. That made me a very eccentric person. And I think, and I am trying to think that because of that, being a queer person, I became very eccentric. So hence, I was very concerned about the body that I have. So I can relate more with people who have similar body, similar gender expression, similar preferences. But just as I was aloof about, just as I decided to become aloof about the heteronormative people because I thought it doesn't apply to me because I'm never gonna go that way. The same thing, I think I also had the same attitude towards lesbians because they're women. I'm a male assigned bird, and I love men, so I don't have to do anything with lesbians, you know, that way. Or trans now, but not then. At that time, trans was seen. I used to also be really, I won't say repulsed, but I was very afraid about trans people being around me, you know, because I think there is a lot more. Transphobia is just too evident, right? As I said, like in the beginning, I just call you out.
Yes.
So I was, and I think as a child, when you don't have any sense of power or agency to yourself, and you have a lot of ambitions, and you are really afraid that people might just be very violent towards you, and you don't want to do that.
Right.
So that way. So, yeah. So similarly with, the same thing is like, so I think that way there is people who are like, there are some people who are very keenly interested in them despite whether they are social activists or not, because they are somebody who have a very keen interest to be very informed about people. Or you become aware about the intersections of lesbians, gays, trans and bisexuals and queer and intersex and asexuals, like lived realities when you are indulging in a project as such, or when you become a social activist. But for the general population, within of LGBTIQ, there is still a lot of gap of communication, a lot of myths and assumptions of each other, which needs to be broken. And that's where Nazaria also comes in, because Nazaria does a lot of work on this regard.
Right.
So as a resource organization, weeding out myths.
It's trying to remove the compartmentalization of different communities.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on, and we'll just talk about your work briefly. So you are a co-founder of the Chinkyhomo project. Did identity labels play a major role in the formation of Chinkyhomo project?
In the sense?
In the sense that when you started with this project, did you have one particular demography that you wanted to work for, or it started with an all-inclusive idea and then you focused your attention to somewhere? What is the role of identity labels in the Chinkyhomo project?
In the Chinkyhomo project, so I think we can't say we're not doing something devoid of the identity politics, because the two words Chinky and Homo,
Right.
are such a loaded word, right? As very loaded in terms of identity politics as well. So we are literally playing with it. And who is our target audience? Everybody is our target audience. But then the project will serve different purpose for different target audience. Be it for the non-queer, Northeastern people at home and also out in the world, in the country. For them, it will be to sort of see the similar context, and also how we queer again feel like another thing that we've been all talking about as Northeastern people is the alienation we feel from the country, and then to let them know that we feel doubly alienated. We're not just talking about the Indian, but also we're talking about them as well. You also make us feel alienated. Right. The way we've been saying that India makes us feel alienated. Second thing is also for the and then not first, second, not in that order, but then also for the Indian, the mainland Indian population. For them, the purpose is for them to sort of be able to break their assumptions about about the Northeastern identity, and also their assumptions also about how everybody is isn't most Northeastern men gay because they look feminine and all, such kind of assumptions, to break that myth and to also sort of strike at where their imaginations are stuck at, and then from there to deliver, the interpretations of belonging to that region and of being a certain kind in as many ways possible.
Right.
So we're not trying to reclaim Chinky, we're not trying to reclaim Homo, we're trying to strike, or not just talking about people in mainland India, but also about people back at home. Also the Northeastern, also the queer population as well as the non-queer population. Even the queer populations, our imaginations are also stuck where the main population's imagination is also stuck at.
Right.
So it's basically strike at where it is stuck at, and then sort of see what different forms of interpretations, meaning making can come out of it. Yeah. And also, but before we get on to that, we want to sort of bring together how do Northeastern queer people look at themselves, and how diverse way do they do that, the heterogeneity in the way they look at themselves. We could be belonging to the same community, to the same family, same community, same class, same family, but then we might look at our identities in a very different way. Even to vouch for that agency, to determine what the meaning making when it comes to my body, when it comes to my identity, when it comes to my sexuality. So that's what it is. And one of the main function that it will serve for the queer community back in home, or anybody belonging to Northeast who is queer, is to be able to find a cohort of like lived narratives narrated by people themselves, because when me and David grew up we didn't have any of that, and it also added to the sense of isolation we had. And when we also came out of the region, became part of larger national scene in Delhi or in Hyderabad or in Baroda, at one point we had to leave our identity as an artist, because we have to assimilate ourselves. If we're trying to make it here, survive here, we have to assimilate ourselves. And at one point we had to leave it, and it was a learning process of trying to understand the politics here. It was very enabling to have left it. But when we wanted to create a space of our own, when we had learned what is popular ideas about it, when we are trying to look at what is my demand, what are my needs, that's when we have to go back to it again. And then we realized that not having had I not found David as a friend, I don't think one of us would have arrived where we arrived, and then been able to even formulate this project, or the utility of it, or the purpose of it, or the the form of it, the content of it. It was only after I found somebody like him, and both of us keep on echoing the same thoughts over and over again, that we could even find a conviction that, well, this is real.
Yeah.
Otherwise, when you are the only person going through it, just like when you're queer and you're going through it, you feel like you're the only person. You again feel like maybe, because I felt like when I was trying to have conversations with, even when I talk about the friends in Hyderabad, or when I moved to Delhi, I realized that I could very well be part of the conversations that they were part of, the politically aware conversations, the political conversations, everything. But I always felt like I was not expressing myself wholly and entirely. And I couldn't place why is that so. I couldn't even see that. Like that invisibilization of my Northeastern identity, which has happened once I tried to assimilate myself politically here. That was not even evident to me. I had to realize it.
Yes.
And when did that realization come? Only when another friend of mine started. I remember at one point when I said something to David, or when David said something to me about how we feel that just because we're from Northeast, there is some bit of misinterpretation or miscommunication, or people not able to really understand where we're coming from. And we used to always be like, at some point we so I guess I was going through it on my own, and because I was going through it on my own, you always feel guilty also. You feel like, maybe am I being too problematic here, that way? But when he also said the same thing, when I also said the same thing, we're like, oh, so you are also experiencing that, I'm also experiencing that. Where is it coming from? Blah, 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 blah. It helped us. So, one point we assimilated ourselves, and once we have assimilated ourselves, we also find ourselves not completely fitting into it, something missing. And now with this project, we feel all the more like, now we know what was missing. Okay. And now when it's very, even when I go on public platforms to talk about gender and sexuality issues, before Chinkyhomo project, I used to fumble midway most of the time, because I had this sense of some lack, and because of that my confidence was also not solid for me. But now when I know that lack, and I'm also dealing with it through this project, I feel a little more whole, so I feel more confident talking about things that I was, or it brought back a lot of, it reiterated a lot of frustrations that one had consciously forgotten or ignored, because one could not have always been involved with it, because if I'm trying to make something here, I cannot always involve, like if I'm trying to go beyond the stereotyping of me as an autistic person, then I have to sort of leave it at some point of time. I can't always be obsessed with it. But doing this project meant we have to go back to it also. So it was bringing back anxieties, frustrations once again, but doing it with such a intent and purpose and idea about how to do it, I think also helped reaffirm a lot of confidence and a lot of faith in what and belief in what one's feeling, one feels, one experiences. So that is also there. And talking about everything, like when it comes to gender, sex, sexuality, politics, blah blah blah, everything. So that's also there.
Like this brings us to
Thank
the
you so
end.
much.
It was a real eye opener. Honestly, so many things. We sometimes feel that researching on these things, now we know a lot, but I mean, it was a total eye opener.
Yeah.
Also, one more thing. Is there any Instagram handle, social media handle where our viewers can follow you?
Yeah, I am there as Sagolsem, Pavel Sagolsem in Facebook and Instagram. And the Chinkyhomo project is also there in Facebook and Instagram. And WordPress. Nazaria is also there. Nazaria QFRG. The Chinkyhomo project, also TCHP. Nazaria QFRG is also there in Instagram, Facebook, and WordPress as well. Please go through them. Please, the thing is, we do our work, but then I think the best way in which, I mean, we do a lot of work as a Chinkyhomo project. As myself, I do a lot of thinking and do a lot of work. As and Nazaria also, but the best is when we are able to communicate with the world and connect with the world. So please write to us any queries that you have. Please write to us. We may not respond to it right away, but then we will definitely take it. Like, it will be a cue for us to sort of think into the domain, do some work on it. So please, and no one is an expert here. Everybody is all trying to bring the perspectives together, and we're trying to see the like the alternate truths, like truths. There are several truths out there. We're just trying to figure out what all truths are there, so that we're able to understand something more clearly and with more in depth and with more, from much more different positions. So please do write to us at any point of the time. That will be lovely.
So guys, all these handles will be there in our description. Do check out the description. And until next time, peace.
Thank you. Yay.